Okay, so today the topic which we shall discuss is the corporate board capital. The corporate board capital is basically referring to the corporate leadership. So when you are studying corporate board capital, essentially you are studying who are the people who provide the leadership to the company. It's almost inconceivable to have a very bad leadership and a great company. And at the same time, other ways also literally impossible that you have the great people and the things are going wrong and wrong and wrong. So generally speaking, the kind of board capital or the kind of leadership of the company we have, it determines significantly how the performance of the company will be. So like leaders, like company. Good leaders, good company. Bad leaders, bad company, right? Before we start a little bit further, I want to introduce you some basic board of directors structure. In most of the world, all the public companies, they have two. This is board of directors, right? And I drew a line between circles. The percentage can vary, but as a rule of thumb, we have 50% of executive board. As I said, it's not a divine word. The ratio can change depending upon the country where the company is registered, or it also depends upon your own company's internal requirements. But as a rule of thumb, it's a 50-50. And the 50% is non-executive directors. Executives are the managers, the top managers, not the medium or the lower level managers, but the top managers. Or if I have to explain it in an informal way, these are the people who work 9 to 5 kind of job, they get salary. And if I have to name some top executives, I would say CEO is the skipper of the ship. But apart from that, he has some deputies. And the deputies are, the biggest deputy is CFO, the Chief Financial Officer of the company. And then you have CMO, Chief Marketing Officer. You have Chief Operation Officers. In many cases, you have, for example, if you're an IT company, right? We have a new position which I never heard before, is called CIO, Chief Information Officer. In BP or these kind of companies where we have health hazards or the environmental issues, we also have CSO, Chief Security Officer or Safety Officer. Chief Safety Officer. So in many cases, but for example, CFO, CMO are very generic things. They're very general. They are. But for example, if you're Microsoft, you will not have CSO's position. But if you're BP, hopefully you will not have CIO position. Okay, make sense? But then we have another set of directors called non-executive directors. Yep. Chief Security Officer. In some companies, for example, where the health and safety of people and the environment is in danger, the law mandates you that you must, not only law, but you yourself as volunteer, that we are careful about people, property, environment, and we have a designated person in the top board of directors, not just a small low-level engineer who would be looking after if there's a pollution, if the chemicals are flowing in the river or not. But we have somebody at the helm of affairs, very big position, who will not only look after the health and safety matters, but also would be part of the meetings so that we can hold him accountable. Hey, what have you done, by the way? Why did we read in the newspaper that the oil well that we have in between Estonia and Helsinki, Tallinn and Helsinki, why we have heard, why people are chasing, that there was some cruise which spilled oil. If imagine you are a shipping company. People have spotted, some Greenpeace people have spotted that there was a leakage of oil. Explain it. And who will make their life miserable? These people. They're called non-executive directors. As an abbreviation, we call them NEDs. All right? I'm coming to that. You know what? So the NEDs, these are not 9 to 5 type of people. They attend the board meetings when the meeting is organized. Normally, and as a rule of thumb, a company has 5 to 6 or 7 meetings a year. And that is when they are visiting, they are meeting the board of directors. And many times, these meetings are not even organized in the headquarters of the company. They could be in some holiday place somewhere. So people are not physically present in the building of where the companies, function. But they have a very important thing. They are monitoring and controlling. Imagine a board of directors comprising of all the executives. CEO is the chief of the company, right? Do these people have courage to counter his arguments? Do these people have enough courage to hold him, question him freely, objectively, without any fear or fright? Please tell me. They are the boss. He is the boss. Come on. How can they dare to ask him difficult questions?
Even if 70% is 30%.
Sorry?
Like if there are more people and executives and less.
It depends upon the voting also. So if that is why, as a rule of thumb, it's 50-50. But look at these people. These are non-executive directors. And also we call them outside directors. They're outsiders. Outsiders means they are not working within the company. All right. The reason I'm spending this introduction here is that so that things become clear. These non-executive directors can also be independent and dependent. These people, how many of you are familiar with the parliamentarian system? You know, the government, there's a parliament, like in UK. In the UK, we have the lower house. Lower house consists of people who are elected through the voting. And out of them, we make some government. And then these people are ministers. They work, they're executives. But then we have upper house. Upper house people don't take participation in the executive decisions. They don't run the state, but they are monitoring, controlling, keeping an eye, watching the actions of these people. They're more like whistleblowers. In corporate governance, we use this word whistleblowers, that when you see something wrong happening, you don't keep mum, don't remain silent, you shout. All right, so they are the people who are, because it's such a widely used expression, so I'm using this word, they are monitoring and controlling. Of course, they provide guidance, they provide advice, because it's not just policing thing. People can also approach these people, hey, you're so senior, you have 5 decades work experience under your belt. Could you please share your experiences? We are stuck in a problem. We are in deep trouble. Have you ever had because these people are quite, senior. They're not very young in 20s or 30s. They're very experienced people. How did you tackle? Have you come across this problem in your life before? Could you please provide us advice how to take care of this situation, how to come out of this soup? You get my point? And then people would, oh yes, we had this problem. When 20 years ago, I used to work for this company, we had a similar situation. We tackled it like this. They are sage. The sage, the good old advisors. So they are like elderly, you can say. Could you notice that I didn't put them in one category, I put them in two categories. Mark my words. Supposedly, expectedly, hopefully, they people are not in the influence of these people. Because imagine if this is only a mirage, if this is only a artificial non-executiveness, then if they people are handpicked of these people, then what is the fun? Then it's only a mask. So we don't want them just non-executive for the namesake, but also effectively. They should not only look independent, but they should be independent. But see what? I also call some of them as dependent. Guess why? If these people are comprising of some big supplier of the company, or a big customer of the company, or a big consultant of the company. Which company? This board of directors of X company. Even though they are outsiders, but they are under the influence of these people. Imagine, I'm an executive, I call a board meeting, and guess what? Samriti, you are my non-executive director, but at the same time, you are my supplier also. Can you make me angry? Why? Then I will not place order to you next time. And if you're my customer, I provide you some products which are very vital for your company. And I give you very generous discounts. And then I hear, what is she talking about? Do you think I would give you this discount next time? And if you're my consultant, you provide me, you're a tax consultancy company, and also I recruit you as my non-executive director. Again, if you make me angry, you will lose business. That is why I call them as dependent. They are outsiders, but they have a lot of economic or business dependence on these people. All right? And this is why, sarcastically, we call these people as gray directors. Why gray? Because gray is between black and white. These are executive. Everybody knows that these are paid employees. How can they challenge? But at least they're clear. And then we have another category, which I will discuss with you, which are completely independent. They have no economic interest in the company. But then we have a category in between. So black, white, gray. Now, a third category, not third category, but a second subcategory of non-executive directors is called independent directors. Look at the word independent. Very pure word, Puritan. They have no business economic affiliation with the company at all. They are the people who have spent many seasons in the corporate life. And they are such a big name on their own that if these people, especially this guy, is trying to manipulate him or her, their integrity, their back is so strong that they would never bend down to his dictates or his influences because they have no economic interest. They have nothing to lose. When you have some economic vested interest, then your loyalty can be questioned. But when you have no economic interest in the company, they are not shareholders, they're salaried people, they don't have any business relationship with the company. All the company give them is that when they are invited to attend the meeting, the company is organizing the stay in a hotel, and on top of that, they pay them some honorarium. Honorarium means something as a gratitude, not a wage, but as a gratitude. Oh yes, please take this money. Thanks for coming. Like your presence, blah, blah, blah. But it's not a wage. It's not a salary. It's called honorarium. Have you heard this word? Like when I invite some people here, for example, I invited, I shouldn't name, well, when I invite some guest lecturers, all right, as a courtesy, we give them some gratitude. Meeting fee, you can say. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Like this, some kind of courtesy, courteous payment, something out of courtesy, not because you. Well, it could be monetary plus non-monetary, or only non-monetary, or only monetary. Like I can ask you, Samriti, can you attend my board meeting? Of course, you have to be first my board member. And I say, okay, all right. Can you arrange your own hotel and stuff, transportation, your dearness allowance, all the expenses you incurred. You pay from yourself, and I will transfer the money to the bank account. Or I say that, hey, take the ticket, take the hotel thing. Everything is there, so you don't have to spend anything from your own. But I give some dearness allowance. Dearness allowance means that you have to get some daily wage or something. But I shouldn't call it wage. It's more like a token of gratitude. You can call whatever you want to, but it's not salary or a wage, all right? Yeah, yeah. But it's not a bribery either. You get my point? So these are the people who are very clear, categorical. So this is how the board of directors work. They people are monitoring, controlling. If I see from the negative side, if I see from the clash of interest side, then these people are monitoring and controlling them. But if I look from a positive side, then the same people will also provide some kind of guidance, consultancy, etc. Right? Some kind of advice rather, I would say. Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is how the board of directors work. Or not work, but what is included in the board of directors. Work. Mm-hmm. These are some general definitions of corporate governance. It's only for your knowledge, but I don't want to discuss it here because my purpose is something else. The next thing I want to discuss with you is the agency theory. Remember, most of you who will write thesis in finance, then agency theory would be very important foundation of your research in the theoretical part. The agency theory is, I want to portray an example. Imagine you are a small pulla making company in Uvascular, a very small time shop. The idea is yours. The money is yours. You have some savings, and you know that now I can invest and make a startup company. Let's assume that you also start manufacturing or making pulla in one part of your household because you need kitchen. So you're using your own home kitchen for this purpose also. And imagine that you don't hire any employee, you yourself are employee as well. Mm-hmm. Money belongs to you, land belongs to you, the idea belongs to you, and the labor belongs to you. All right? In economics, if you remember, we have 4 factors of production. What? We have land, we have labor, we have capital, we have enterprise. Land gets rent, labor gets wages, capital gets interest, enterprise gets profit or loss. Have you noticed I didn't use the word landlord, capitalist, entrepreneur, or laborer? I said land, labor, capital, enterprise. Why so? Because laborer per se is not getting the wage. Laborer is a recipient of wage on behalf of the labor he or she has invested. Do you get my point? If laborer as a person doesn't give labor, then he or she is not entitled for wage. Just you see the face of a laborer doesn't mean that you give the wage. The laborer is entitled to wage if he or she has given you the labor. So we, in economics, in business, we categorize these factors on functional basis, not on personal basis. So this is why it's a function gets the reward, not the person, not the landlord getting rent. Land gets the rent. Make sense? So same thing, I want to say here that if the company is small, then land, labor, capital, and enterprise belong to one person. The one person is a manager. The same person is a manager and a worker as well. Now let's compare manager and investor. I'm keeping labor and other things out. I'm only focusing on investor and manager. So if you're a small pulla making company in Uvascula, you are a manager and investor at the same time, both. Will there be any clash of interest between you being a manager and a investor? Would the manager inside you like to cheat the investor inside you? You see, let's say we are one human being, half of us is investor and half of us is a manager. Would the half of your persona, the manager, can cheat the half of your persona, the other half of yourself, the investor? Can you do it? It's not possible. Because if you think something as a labor manager, you also think at the same time as investor. So you only took those decisions which are satisfying both you as a manager and you as an investor. You will never take anything which dissatisfy either of the two. You get my point? But when the company becomes bigger, now this pulla making company is getting bigger. Eventually, it becomes a company. It becomes a public listed company. Imagine a pulla making company becomes a listed company in Helsinki Stock Exchange. Now, tell me one thing. Would you be the same person, manager and investor? Now, the company has grown bigger, right? You have many production capacities, not only in Uvascula, but also in different parts. Or maybe you import some things from other countries. Would there be the same person? Or now you hire the different person for different functions? Remember, you are a manager and investor, but the same person. There would still be managers and investors, but will they be the same person? Huh? Will be the same persons? But how can you become public listed company then? Come on, you can't be a listed company in a stock exchange. Yeah. To what extent? Unless there are 1,000 family members. Do they even have capability or interest? Well, when you become a public listed company, what happens? You have investors who buy shares of your pulla making company in the morning and they can sell by the afternoon. Do you have, See what, try to understand. When I say the public listed company, I mean a few hundreds or a few thousand million euros. Do you know the value of Marks and Spencer? Until last night, it was $80 billion. 80 billion pounds, by the way. 80 billion pounds mean it's nearly 100 million euros. 100 billion euros, by the way. Which is even bigger, even bigger. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, Apple started a campaign to buy its shares back from people. And you know how much fund they kept to buy back the shares? $200 billion. Guess what? $200 billion could be the GDP of some countries. How big the companies are. And I'm saying only those shares which they want to buy back. They would still be shares, of course. So how big the company is. Okay, so what happens that we have two categories of people, then investors and the managers. I'm using the simple word manager or CEO because they're managers. Even if they're CEO, these are managers. Now compare the situation with the situation when a few years ago, you were a small pulla making company in Uvascular. You're playing different roles, but was there any clash of interest inside your conscience or your actions? You yourself said some time ago that there's no clash, but now there will be a clash. First of all, you are not the only investor. There are hundreds, thousands, or hundreds of thousands investors who buy shares. And secondly, you being the founder of the company, you still are with the company, like Bill Gates has been, or like Steve Jobs has been, or like Richard Branson has been. You are the founder and you remain with the company, like Warren Buffett has been. So you are with the company, but you only hold a small fraction of the investment. And then there are managers. You can't manage the company, everything by your own. Come on, it's inconceivable. Then you hire managers. Who you hire? These people you hire. Mm-hmm. So investors hire manager. Now, here, take a small pause. In finance, in theoretical finance, these investors are called principals. Principal. I'm using the word singular, principal, yeah? And the manager is called agent. Okay, the manager is called agent and the owner is called principal. When you were a small pulla making company in Uvascular, you yourself were principal and agent. But now the principal and the agents are separate. Does it make sense? Please tell me, would they have same motivations, interests, agendas, thoughts, or would that be different? Or may or can it be different? I'm not saying it will be always different. Is there any potentiality? Is there any potentiality that there is a clash of interest between their things which make them happy and things which make them happy? So I'm using a phrase from economics, utility function. Utility function means things which make one set of people happy and the utility function for the other people. Will they be on the same page? Will their satisfaction, motivation be aligned perfectly? Or do you think that their utility functions can be different? It was not different when you were a small company, but now they are different because the company has grown bigger. This potential clash of interest between the interests of the principal and the agent is studied in the agency theory. It's like politics. It's like people elect the state, not state, the government. They cast vote to X party because they are in favor of the ideology of X party. X party is now ruling. X party now has executives, prime minister of the country, finance minister. I'm now using the word ministers instead of managers. Do you think that these ministers would still be honest, loyal to their electoral who cast the vote to them? Would there be clash of interest? Even though they are representing them, because they hired them, if they were manager or if they were voted, they become ministers. There is a possibility of clash of interest between there. I'm using a word to make it familiar to you. Utility functions can be different. Utility functions can be different. All right. So now what we do here, utility function of agent, utility function of principal. If I see myself as an investor of the company, I would like to get more share of profit. I would like to have the stock price going up, the stock return, you know, in your, you know how to calculate stock return. So I would like to see the profit up, stock return up. I would like to see the company's market share growing, because then my share value will also increase. The market share go up. On the contrary, if I think like, and there are many other things, and I can make it open-ended. I'll come to this more ideas. But the point I'm trying to make is that if I think like an agent, now I think like manager, I would like to see my wage, or let's say my compensation up. I would like to see my career graph. I not only work, I not only work in a company to do the job, I also want to improve my caliber so that in case when I leave the job, I have more skill acquired. You know, when you're working as a manager, you not only do the job, you also learn new things. So you also want to improve your professional skills. So you want to have improve your career graph. And you want job security, don't you? And one more thing. Investors are thinking only about the profits, right? But when you are a manager, you don't have to think only about investors. You think about your employees also, because you see them every day. You also talk about your customers, because you deal with them every day. You also think about your suppliers. You also don't want to do anything stupid so that you are not caught by the law. So you are also accountable to the state, the government. But they people are only thinking about themselves, profit, growth, dividend. But when you are an agent, you have to think about stakeholders. You know, stakeholders? Owner of the company are not the only stakeholders of a company. The employees are very important people, customers, clients, your local community. Even if nobody has invested a single euro in the firm, you are still concerned about the communities, the local public, you know, what we call as a corporate social responsibility. So you are also concerned about the other stakeholders. And there is a possibility that the interest of the principal and the agent clash. Now I give you 5 minutes for a small task. Think about these things and also more ideas, bring more issues, which makes agent or the principal happier. Happier means happier is an informal expression which enhances their utility function, basically. Think about these things and find out that can you spotlight, can you identify some areas where their interests are clashing? It means that if agent is acquiring more utility, it is at the expense of the principal. Or if the principals are acquiring more utility, agent is unhappy. Basically, where are the points where there's a clash of interest between them? This task you can do now. In many countries, the family businesses are very dominant, right? They started the business, and over the time, the business expanded. So this corporate empire could be even 100 or more years long. So there's a legacy, there's a history of this company. The problem happen is that these companies, I have seen many cases where these corporate empires, over the time, their control increases, but the ownership decreases. Look at this. Why do we have conflict between the principal and the agent? Because they are the owners. And they are the controllers. A small Uvascular-based pulla making factory. You are the principal and the agent. You are the owner and controller. Manager is a controller. Investor is the owner. There's no conflict between ownership and control. But the problem happens is that in the modern day public listed companies, when the companies are not only big, but very complex. Complex means you have subsidiaries all over the world. Look at Coke and Pepsi. There's hardly any country where they don't have operations. And then they have the local, regional Asia office, and then the South Asia office, and all kind of structure. And all these small offices, for example, Coke is a US-based company. But Coke India is a public listed company in Indian stock exchanges. They have Indian investors, they have Indian managers, which shows complexity of business. You get my point? The point I'm trying to make is that the big companies, there is a conflict because controllers and owners are different people. And that is why the interest, and in the family, because this word appealed to me, that the family businesses, the family members, over the time, the percentage of their ownership decreases. But in many cases, their control increases. Because the family people, the founders, they are not only owners, but they also have representation in the top management. And why their ownership decreases? First of all, when the company becomes bigger, let's say you're owning 20 shares out of 100, yeah? So you are 20% owner. The company became big. Now shares are not 100, but 1,000. You still have 20 shares. Now you own 2% of the company, but you're still representing in the top. So it means that over the time, as a family businesses, the ownership decreases, but the control increases. That can also be a big problem in the family businesses. So you are not thinking, you're thinking both from the ownership and controlling point of view. One thing I want to show, I don't remember if I shared with you, but if I haven't, who cares? Is that when we discuss a company leadership, right? We have to keep in mind that are we talking, what corporate model we are considering? The corporate history is very, very important. Remember, the kind of history and culture you have, the kind of legal system you will have. The kind of legal system you have would reflect on the kind of corporate laws you have. The culture, sociology, psychological issues, history, the background have an impact on the corporate sector also. Okay, I want to give you an example. Imagine okay, I think I can still keep it like this. Can you see these two squares? Yeah. Let's call it a US company. Let's call it a German company, German or European company. Imagine we have two companies. One is America-based company, US-based company. The second is Germany, German-based company. They are in the same industry, same sector, everything is same. Ceteris paribus, all other things being equal. The ownership of an American company would be like this. The ownership of a German company would be like this. In the US company, we have large number of small shareholders. In the German company, we have small number of very large shareholders. Does it make sense or not? So if you look at the American company, the ownership is like water. It looks like a water jar, right? It means that the ownership is more fluid. Whereas in the German style company, the ownership is more like a block. These are big block holders. And who are these big sharks? These are rich financial institutions. The German banks invest not only in the stocks, but also in the debt. So they give you loan, but also invest in the shares of the companies. And they really own substantial part of the company. And I would say Finland is quite close to this kind of model. Look at the ownership of Finnair. More than 50% shares are owned by the state or the state affiliated organizations. Whereas in the US style company, or we call it Anglo-Saxon, the English speaking countries, especially US, the ownership is very fluid. And we use the word diffused and dispersed. Share ownership. It's diffused. Whereas in the German style company, the ownership is very condensed. It's more like condensed, very, very condensed, very thick. Here, the ownership is very thin. And guess what? Okay, all right. I make a hypothetical situation for you. Imagine there's a CEO of US company and there's a CEO of German company. All right. Please tell me, if everything is same, which CEO is more powerful than the other? Which CEO is more powerful than the other? Think about it. And give me the reasons for it. Take 2 minutes. Yes. In American style company, for the shareholders who are scattered, diffused, dispersed, it's very important for them. It's not possible for them to make a lobby and dictate the CEO. The CEO is almost being unchallenged. Whereas here, it would be absolute suicidal for CEO to ignore the phone calls of these big sharks, the big block holders. Here, even if he takes some decisions of his choice, there's no real lobby to challenge his decisions. Here, for every step, this CEO has to take the consent of these people, unless these people give the consent. CEO is almost So I would say that in the American style company, the agency cost, the conflict of interest is between the principal and the agent. You get my point? But in the German style, there is a conflict between among the between the principals, because what these top shareholders want may not be the same as what these minority shareholders want. Here, everyone is minority. Here, there's a tiny, mini minority. But then large chunk, the large votes are owned by the financial institutions or the other companies. Like Volkswagen shares could be owned by the top German banks and also other top German companies. And there are very few individual investors. Look at the share ownership of Finnair, by the way. It will not be so different from this style of functioning. The point I'm trying to make is that here, the problem is the agent going unchallenged by the principals. There's a conflict of interest between principal and the agent. Here, there's a intra-principal conflict within the principals. They are shareholders, they are also shareholders. But their viewpoint can be different from these people. All right? So the poor agent is out of the conflict. And the real conflict is between the principals and the principals. So it's an intra, not inter conflict between principal and the agent, but rather it's an intra-principal conflict. This is why we use a phrase that agency cost is vertical in American style. Why vertical? Because it's between the principal at the bottom and the agent at the top. Here, the conflict is more horizontal between one type of investor and the other type of investor. Do you get my point? So if you look at the German style company, the agency cost is more of horizontal. Horizontal because it's between one investor and another investor. In America, in US, in the Anglo-Saxon settings, the agency cost is vertical because it's between all the small shareholders at the bottom, the principals, and the agent at the top. So therefore, the very nature of political game playing in the corporate boards is different. Tell me one thing more. If you agree that American CEO is more powerful, whose pay should be more than? If you have all else being equal and a German company CEO, which you said is less powerful, and then American company CEO, which you said is more powerful, whose compensation package should be heavier? Whose pay package should be big? Who earns more? Of course, US, because you have more power, right? Here, you can't dare to increase your salary because these people are, here, you're the king or the queen. Do you get my point? And it's true. Some 10 years ago, I don't have the latest updates. Some 10 years ago, there was a survey of the top 100 paid CEOs. And at that time, look, I'm not comparing US CEO with the European CEO. I'm comparing US CEO with the English CEO, even though they both are Anglo-Saxon. But see the difference. The difference was that at that time, Sky Broadcasting CEO was the highest paid CEO in the UK. All right. And he was 95th. And all other above him were American CEOs. Because more power brings you more compensation. All right. And if you are paying too much yourself, disproportionately to the company's performance, this is also an agency cost. So one very interesting topic of research can be to what extent is agency cost in the Finnish system? Because so this is the agency thought. Right? Now you have some ideas about the agency cost. The agency cost is a cost which arises because of the divergences of the utility function of the agent and the principal. And like we have an old saying that when two elephants fight, it's the grass who suffers. When the two elephants fight, who suffers most? The grass. So when there's a conflict between principal and the agent, who suffers? Company. Of course, you can ask me questions.